What happens when Hollywood's most beloved, most unshakably humble star finally reaches his breaking point on live television? What we saw on The View wasn't just unexpected, was explosive. And it all began the moment Joy Behar crossed a line that should never have been crossed. This confrontation has everyone talking. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why Keanu Reeves, the man who never loses his cool, finally snapped on national TV. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment. Because this story gets intense fast. The day started like any other on The View. Theme music, applause, the co-hosts sliding into their seats around that iconic table. Joy Behar, sharp-tongued and smirking as always, seemed ready for trouble. But no one expected that the one person who wouldn't sit there and take it would be Keanu Reeves. Keanu walked onto the set with that familiar, calm presence, simple black suit. Gentle, grateful smile. The audience erupted as he waved modestly and took his seat with the quiet grace of someone who's done 1,000 interviews. Welcome to The View. Keanu, Whoopi Goldberg said warmly once the applause settled. Thank you for having me, he replied, soft-spoken, sincere. It's a pleasure to be here. The interview flowed easily at first. His new film, his love of motorcycles. The acts of kindness that have made him the internet's sweetheart. Keanu answered every question with humility and thoughtfulness. But Joy Behar had been unusually silent. And anyone who knows Joy knows that silence means she's winding up. She sat there, tapping her pen. That familiar smirk growing sharper. Waiting for the perfect moment. You know, Keanu, Joy suddenly cut in, slicing straight through his story about mentoring young actors. There's something I've been wanting to ask. The air shifted. The co-hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Keanu focused fully on her, still calm, but alert. Of course, he said. What would you like to know? Joy leaned forward, smiling like she'd just trapped something. Well, you've built this whole reputation around being this nice guy. Humble star who gives away millions and helps strangers. But I have to wonder how much of that is real, and how much of it is just the smartest PR strategy Hollywood has ever seen. Silence slammed across the studio. Even the audience froze. This wasn't the kind of question people asked anyone, let alone Keanu Reeves. Keanu didn't flinch. But there was a subtle shift, tightening around the eyes. A slight change in posture. Anyone who paid attention could see it. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Could you clarify what you mean? Joy leaned in harder, energized by the tension she'd created. Oh, come on. Keanu, you're telling me a Hollywood megastar is just naturally this selfless? That there's no calculation, no performance? That your whole modest, humble thing isn't just another role you're playing? The co-hosts bristled. Whoopi tried to intervene. But Joy wasn't done. Normal people don't have cameras conveniently around every time they do something kind. Normal people don't turn charity into viral marketing campaigns. So forgive me if I'm skeptical of saying Keanu. Keanu took a breath. When he spoke, his voice was controlled but colder. Joy, I understand skepticism. But what you're doing isn't skepticism. It's cruel. Cruel. Joy laughed, actually laughed. Oh, please. I'm asking real questions. You want to talk about cruelty? Try manipulating people's emotions to sell movie tickets. Try building a fake persona to boost your brand. That was the moment something changed in Keanu's eyes. The man who had survived unimaginable personal loss with grace. The man who avoided conflict at every turn. Had reached his limit. You want to talk about manipulation, Joy? He said, voice low but suddenly heavy enough to silence the room. Then let's talk about manipulation. Every person in that studio leaned in. Keanu Reeves, the gentlest man in Hollywood, was done being gentle. You sit at this table every day, he continued, his voice gathering strength with every word. And every day, Keanu continued, voice low but unwavering. You tear people down for entertainment. Someone genuinely tries to do some good in the world, and you twist it into something cynical and calculated. Because that's what gets ratings, isn't it, Joy? Joy's smirk finally faltered, but she pushed back. I'm a journalist, Keanu. I ask hard questions. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't do interviews. Hard questions. Keanu leaned forward, the calm facade finally cracking. You want to ask hard questions? Then ask me about the work. Ask me about the craft. Ask me about the stories we're trying to tell. But don't you dare sit here and question whether my grief is real. Whether my desire to help people is genuine. Whether the loss of my best friend, my daughter, my sister somehow made me into a better person or just a better actor. A stunned silence swept across the panel. Even Joy's face twitched for a moment before her defenses snapped back into place. Now you're being dramatic, she shot back. I didn't bring up your tragedies. I'm talking about your image. Your brand. That's different. No, Joy, Keanu said, his voice rising something no one on that set had ever heard. It isn't different. You can't separate the two when you're attacking someone's character. When you call someone's kindness fake, when you insist their generosity is calculated, you're attacking everything they are. You're telling the world that goodness doesn't exist, that every decent act must have an ulterior motive. Sonny Hostin tried to intervene. Maybe we should know, Keanu said firmly, eyes locked on Joy. Let her finish. She clearly has more to say about my supposed manipulation. Please, Joy explained to everyone how helping a stranded motorist change a tire is a publicity stunt. Tell us how giving my Matrix salary to the crew was smart business. Tell us how privately paying for a friend's cancer treatment is calculated marketing. Joy's face reddened. Her voice sharpened. See? This is what I mean. You've got a list. Ready? You know exactly which good deeds to trot out whenever someone challenges you. That's not kindness. That's not kindness. That's crisis management. The audience murmured, discomfort spreading across the studio. But Keanu wasn't finished. You want to see crisis management, he said, rising from his chair. The studio gasped. Crisis management is when someone like you gets called out for being needlessly cruel on national television and, instead of apologizing, instead of showing 1 ounce of humanity, you double down. That's crisis management. I'm not being cruel, Joy insisted, but the confidence was gone. I'm being realistic. I'm being honest. Honest. Keanu let out a sharp, bitter laugh, something nobody in that room had ever heard from him. You want honest. Here's honest. You're not a journalist. Journalists seek truth. You seek controversy. You don't care about facts, you care about reactions. You don't try to inform people, you try to provoke them. Because provoked people keep watching. And watching people make you money. Keanu Whoopi tried again. Maybe we can. No, Whoopi. With respect, I'm not done. He turned back to Joy, who was now gripping her pen so tightly her knuckles were white. You want to question my motives? Fine. Let's question yours. How much of your salary comes from creating drama? How much of your career is built on tearing down people who can't fight back? And when someone finally does fight back, when someone finally calls you out, you hide behind the word journalist like it gives you permission to be heartless. Joy's voice cracked with anger. How dare you lecture me about journalism? You're an actor. You pretend for a living, and you pretend to be a decent human being. Keanu shot back instantly. At least I'm honest about the pretending. The studio fell dead silent. Cameras rolled, but the room felt frozen. This wasn't the calm, gentle Keanu the world adored. This was a man who had been pushed past every boundary. Joy, desperate to regain footing, snapped, "You're proving my point." The mask is coming off. The real you is showing on. You're not nearly as nice as you pretend. Keanu's voice dropped to a whisper so soft the microphones barely caught it. Yet it carried more force than anything he had said. The real me, Joy, is someone who has buried more people than anyone should have to bury. The real me is someone who wakes up every day and chooses to make the world a little better instead of a little worse. The real me believes kindness matters, that helping people matters, that treating others with dignity and respect matters. And the real you, Keanu said, each word landing with icy precision, is someone who just spent 10 minutes on national television trying to convince people that none of those things are real. The line hit Joy like a physical blow. For the first time in the entire confrontation, she had no comeback. The woman who always had a retort, who never lost a verbal battle, sat frozen mouth, slightly open, staring at a man who had just cut through every shield she had. But Keanu wasn't done. Something in him had broken open years of restraint, years of swallowing criticism and choosing the high road, finally spilling out. You know what the tragic part is, Joy? He continued, voice quiet but razor sharp. You could use your platform for something meaningful. You could lift people up. You could ask questions that actually matter, questions that help people understand the world. He leaned in. But instead, you choose to be a bully. And not just any bully. A bully with a microphone and an audience of millions. Joy finally found her voice, but it was shaky. I am not a bully. I ask tough questions. If you can't handle the heat, then stop. One word. Delivered so calmly, so firmly, that Joy reflexively fell silent. Just stop, he repeated. You said enough 5 minutes ago. But you kept going because that's what you do. You never know when to stop. You never know when you've crossed the line from journalism into cruelty, from skepticism into character assassination. Sunny Hostin stepped in again. Maybe we should take a commercial. No, Keanu said, still staring at Joy. We're finishing this right here. The people watching deserve to see how this ends. They deserve to see what happens when someone finally calls out the playground bully. Joy's anger came roaring back, her voice rising. Playground bully. Are you kidding me? I'm doing my job. I'm holding celebrities accountable. I'm asking the questions that need to be asked. Whose questions? Joy. Keanu shot back, his voice gaining momentum. Who exactly is demanding that you question whether kindness is real? Who wants you to tear down people who try to do good? He didn't wait for an answer, because I can tell you who's not asking for that. Not the crew members who sent their kids to college because I shared my salary. Not the cancer patients who got treatment because someone cared enough to help. Not the stranded families who got home safely because someone stopped to lend a hand. Joy tried to cut in. The public has a right to know. The public has a right to know the truth, Keanu said, slicing through her words. Not your cynical interpretation of it. The public deserves accurate information, not your bitterness dressed up as journalism. And they deserve to see good things happening in the world, without someone immediately jumping in to scream fake. The other hosts exchanged glances at ease, frozen, aware they were witnessing television history. No one dared interrupt again. Joy tried one last time to regain control. You know what I think, Keanu? She said, leaning forward. I think you're having this big emotional outburst because you know I'm right. You're angry because someone finally saw through your act and you can't handle being exposed. That did it. The moment Joy spoke the word exposed, something in Keanu snapped. Exposed? His voice cracked like thunder, booming through the studio. Several audience members jumped. You want to talk about being exposed, Joy? Fine. Let's talk about what you've exposed today. He pointed at her slowly. Deliberately, you've exposed yourself as someone so miserable, so bitter, so incapable of believing that good exists in this world, that you have to tear down anyone who proves you wrong. Joy tried to interrupt, but Keanu's force was unstoppable. No, you've had your turn. You've had your chance to attack, to question, to tear down. Now it's my turn. His voice was still powerful but controlled. A volcano with a lid. A man who had held back for years, finally refusing to hold back anymore. You've exposed yourself as someone who thinks cynicism is intelligence, Keanu said, each syllable landing with surgical precision. That cruelty is courage. That tearing people down is the same as building yourself up. He shook his head slowly. You've shown everyone watching that you'd rather destroy something beautiful than admit beauty can exist. Studio crackled with tension. The audience wasn't just silent, they were holding their breath. This wasn't the Keanu Reeves they were used to. But somehow, this was exactly the Keanu Reeves the moment demanded. And you know what else you've exposed? Joy. Keanu continued, his voice returning to that low, dangerously calm register. You've exposed the fact that you're exactly the kind of person who makes good people want to stop being good. Joy blinked. Stunned, you're the voice that whispers. Don't help that stranger people will think you're showing off. You're the reason people hesitate to be generous. Because someone like you will question their motives. Joy swallowed hard. Visibly rattled, but she still had one desperate card left to play. This is rich, she snapped, forcing a shaky laugh. Coming from someone who's having a complete meltdown on live television. Is this the real Keanu Reeves? Is this the calm, centered person you pretend to be? Keanu stood fully, slowly towering over the panel. His presence seemed to fill every corner of the studio. You're absolutely right, Joy, he said. This is the real me. His voice was steady, now calm, resolute, and unshakably grounded. This is someone who has spent his entire life trying to be kind, trying to help others, trying to make the world a little bit better, and who finally reached his limit when faced with someone determined to convince the world that kindness is a lie. He took a step closer. Not intimidating, just undeniably present. This is someone who has lost everyone he's ever loved, and still chooses to love. Someone who has been knocked down more times than any person should be on, still gets up every day trying to lift others. Joy shrank deeper into her chair. And yes, Keanu added, this is someone who finally got angry when confronted with a person whose job seems to be making sure no one else gets lifted up. He paused, letting the silence do its work. Then he looked at the rest of the hosts, confused, frozen, wide-eyed before returning his gaze to Joy. You wanted the real me? Here I am. I believe the world has enough people tearing each other down. It needs more people building each other up. And when you have a platform, when you have an audience, when you have influence, you have a responsibility to use it for good. He let the final sentence fall like a hammer. And what you've done here today, what you do on this show regularly, is the opposite of good. The silence that followed stretched impossibly long. Joy opened her mouth to respond once, twice, but no sound came out. The other hosts didn't move. The audience didn't move. Even the cameras felt like they were holding still. Finally, Keanu reached for his jacket draped over the back of his chair. I think I'm done here, he said softly. Thank you for having me. I hope the people watching got something valuable out of this conversation, even if it wasn't what anyone expected. He took a few steps toward the exit, then stopped, turned, faced Joy one last time. Joy, I genuinely hope that someday you find whatever it is you're looking for by tearing other people down. Because from where I'm standing, it doesn't look like it's making you very happy. He walked off the set. The studio stayed frozen in stunned silence. The cameras kept rolling, capturing Joy Behar sitting speechless at the table. while the man she tried to expose had instead exposed something far more uncomfortable: the truth about her own approach to the world. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Was Joy Behar out of line, or was she just doing her job? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. What other celebrity confrontation would you like to see us cover next?